All right, so let's set this straight about the motel that the resilient Jenkins are currently living in that is a shelter, okay? Now, over a year ago, before they were in this specific shelter, they were in another shelter by the same name, okay? Not gonna give the name, not gonna give the addresses, so the screenshots I'm gonna post are going to be solely of what exactly is going on.
I never talked about the Jenkins, and I'm going to today just this one time, just because I want to say she's making a lot of money, okay? The only reason I know she's making a lot of money is because she popped up on my Facebook, and I'm monetized on Facebook too. And I have less followers than her and less views, okay? And I'm not going to tell you how much I make, but I'm going to tell you I know she's making at least 10 grand a month.
Drama addicts drop everything. Imagine this, a family vlogging their resilient motel life like it's a quirky vacay, kids in tow begging for GoFundMe bucks, only for the whole place to get crushed under a bulldozer any day now. That's the insane reality for Stephanie and Drew Jenkins right freaking now. They've been holed up in this Portland Value Inn motel turned shelter for nearly a year, watching the clock tick like a bomb in a bad thriller. No permanent home? Check. Kids' futures hanging by a thread? Double check. And the plot thickens into a straight-up scandal. Receipts don't lie, but do they? Hit that like button if you're already gasping, and let's unpack this hot mess step by scandalous step. First off, these aren't random dives. The Jenkins fam has ping-ponged between two Portland Value Inns, both owned by the same mysterious franchise overlords. Same name, same owners, same zero stability storyline. The OG spot? A double-story eyesore that got demolished, poof, late 2024 into early 2025. What's left? Fancy five-story affordable housing towering over the rubble. Chilling, right? This ain't hypothetical. It's history repeating like a cursed sequel. And their current digs? It was penciled in for the exact same wrecking ball treatment in early 2026 to flood Southeast Portland with more of those affordable units amid the housing crunch. Screenshots from T-Queen Atrui show it's not listed for immediate demo. Yet.
All right, so let's set this straight about the motel that the resilient Jenkins are currently living in that is a shelter, okay? Now, over a year ago, before they were in this specific shelter, they were in another shelter by the same name, okay? Not gonna give the name, not gonna give the addresses, so the screenshots I'm gonna post are going to be solely of what exactly is going on with demolition, okay? Now, there are two motels of the same name. They're both owned by the same people. The first motel that the resilient Jenkins were at, I think you guys may remember it. It was a double story. They kind of looked like apartments, kind of. Those motels were actually demolished already. They are moving in affordable housing for that area. So that's already done. Now, the research that I did over a year ago again slated both of those motels to be demolished. But that first motel was being demolished at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. That's done. That's over with. Now, this motel has not yet got word that it will be demolished, and you will see some screenshots here on the screen. I also included a screenshot that they are, in fact, a shelter. They've been a shelter since early 2022 when they've converted both of these motels into COVID shelters for the elderly, and then they became shelters for people that are less fortunate, with children, etc., etc. Now, back then, I called this motel. You can't rent any kind of motel here. Like, you can't buy or rent a night here. You have to have a voucher from the state that you can actually stay there with. Now, this motel, again, has not had a time to be demolished. Like I said, last year, they were slating it to follow. So that's what I was following, was the 2025, end of 2025, beginning of 2026 slate date. Now that I look at it, it doesn't look like that's there anymore. However, do I think they will get demolished? Absolutely, because they are just as bad as the original ones that got demolished. In this area, that the one that got demolished was in Southeast, the other one is in a different area, but in this area they are in need of affordable housing. So I do see the government actually tearing it down, but it is not official yet. So I hope it clears everything up. At any time they can pull them out and say, hey, we're gonna get rid of this area and be done with it. And that's a chance you take when you live in a shelter.
But not today is code for brace yourselves, especially when little ones are sleeping under that roof. Flashback for the full tea. These motels weren't always sob story central. Early 2022, COVID crash pads for vulnerable elders. Then pivot to lifelines for families down on their luck. Think single moms, broke dads, wide-eyed kids. No walk-ins with cash. You need a golden ticket state voucher to even get a key. Zero fees for approved peeps. It's all subsidized salvation. So when Steph and Drew hit the airwaves moaning about weekly rent payments and Drew whipped out those proof receipts, the fandom split like a bad breakup. Team, it's a shelter, chill, versus team, but he showed the paper trail. Enter a truie, the detective we deserve, with the smoking gun. Zoom in on those receipts, fam. The address ain't the motel. It's the Grace of New Hope Family Services Development Department, across the freaking street. Not Motel HQ, not even close. Internet exploded. Moths screaming, jaws dropped, conspiracy threads popping off. They're living large on the state's dime, no personal rent, duh, spinning tales of hardship cash grabs, all while their home teeters on demolition eve. One motel down, one to go. Is this the eviction encore we've all been dreading?
You're showing this receipt. So a fun fact about that receipt is that's not even the hotel's main address. You know what address that is when I bring it up? I'll put it here on the screen. It's the Family Services Department that's across the street. During the time that this was done, that he showed a receipt, there was government stuff happening. There's a lot of reasons why he could have a receipt or why him and Steph can have a receipt. The long and short of it is basically most likely they didn't get their voucher for that month and that family services loaded it on a debit card or provided them the funds in order to pay for their week or month or however long they ask for funds at that shelter. Because those of you guys that don't know, when you're living in a shelter, you basically live off a voucher that is worth a certain amount of money, and then you are placed in one of these motels so you can provide the voucher to them. So the fact that they lied, like, are you all really surprised that they are lying that they're paying for a hotel? If you guys go on these websites and things, it directs you to call the motel. And when you call them, they tell you that there's no vacancies due to the fact that they are a shelter. And again, across the street from the shelter is a family services office, and that's what the address is on this receipt. There's numerous different reasons they had a debit receipt, including them loading just a debit card with the funds that are needed for them to live there. But they are not paying for where they are living. Going on a year now.
The real gut punch, those innocent kids caught in the crossfire. School, friends, normalcy, all on pause in this motel merry-go-round. No backup plan announced, no city saviors swooping in. Is it tragic timing or shady spin? Portland housing wars or personal plot hole? The clock's ticking louder, besties. Will they dodge the bulldozer or crash out live on our feeds? Remember even when they were looking for a cosigner? Because that was the exact moment the story did a full plot twist. Up until then, the explanation had always been, we can't save anything because the motel eats all our money every single week. That was the central storyline, the backbone, the reason repeated over and over whenever people asked why the kids were still living out of bags in one cramped room after all this time. But the second housing applications came up, suddenly the problem wasn't money anymore, it was qualification. And viewers immediately clocked it. Because logically, if you've really been paying what you claimed, hundreds weekly, thousands monthly consistently for nearly a year, you wouldn't look like a high-risk tenant. You'd look like the landlord's dream. Proof of consistent payments is literally what apartments want. Your bank statements become your cosigner. So people started asking, where are the statements? That's when the explanations got foggy. Instead of showing clear proof, the conversation shifted again into reasons, delays, technicalities, anything but straightforward confirmation. And that's when the audience began noticing a pattern that was honestly hard to ignore once you saw it. Every solution that required stability got stalled. Every solution that required commitment got picnicked. Every solution that required paperwork got complicated. Apartment needs cosigner. Airbnb, suspiciously too good to be true. Affordable listings, wrong vibe. Trailer parks, suddenly infrastructure experts. Drainage issues. Shelter transition programs, not permanent enough. But the overcrowded motel room, that was somehow the only acceptable, workable, safest option. And that's where people's patience started wearing thin, because this stopped looking like someone trapped with no options and started looking like someone avoiding options. The audience wasn't even being shady at first. People were genuinely trying to help. They were sending listings, calculating costs, comparing square footage, even explaining rental processes step by step in comments. Some were practically acting as free housing advisors. They wanted the kids to have space, a door, a table, somewhere to exist without bumping into adults every second. Yet every suggestion got a new reason. Not a permanent reason, not a consistent reason, just a different reason each time. And when reasons constantly change, people don't see caution, they see strategy. Because here's what many started realizing. If the housing cost wasn't actually what it had been presented as, then the financial struggle narrative didn't work the same anymore. And that's when the conversation online shifted. At first, people asked, why can't they move? Then it became, why won't they move? Because moving fixes the main problem being discussed daily, and fixing the main problem ends the ongoing crisis arc. No more weekly motel stress updates, no more urgent explanations, no more emotional lives about being stuck. Stability closes the storyline, and that led viewers to a much messier question. Nobody wanted to accuse directly, but everyone was thinking, what if the motel wasn't just a situation? What if it was part of the content? Because the moment finances started being talked about openly on live and numbers still didn't line up with the living conditions, the skepticism didn't just grow, it locked in. So now the timeline was looking real different, because before, the audience thought they were watching a family stuck in a bad situation, high rent, bad luck, trying to climb out. But after that receipt explanation and the shelter connection, suddenly it didn't look like they were drowning in expenses. It looked like they were floating while telling everyone they were sinking. And that cosigner era really started aging badly. Remember how Drew got on and explained the house they wanted was actually cheaper than what they were supposedly paying monthly at the motel? That alone should have solved everything. If the house costs less than your current living situation, moving isn't the problem, paperwork is. So instead of showing savings, deposits, or payment history, the lives turned into public casting calls. Anyone willing to cosign?
Strangers, followers, viewers who don't even know them personally, which already had people side-eyeing, because you're simultaneously saying, we spend thousands every month, we have no money saved. But now, with the shelter info, it lands completely differently. Because if the motel wasn't being paid the way it was implied, then what exactly was the emergency everyone was donating and sympathizing over? The story people followed was expensive motel, can't save, stuck. The new picture looked more like housing covered, still stuck, unclear spending. And that's when the internet did what the internet does best: estimate. Not accuse, estimate. Viewers started breaking down social media earnings, engagement rates, TikTok payouts, brand reviews, all the visible stuff she herself posts. Other creators chimed in saying they made decent money with smaller pages, so naturally people began wondering what someone with her reach could be earning.
I never talk about the Jenkins, and I'm going to today just this one time, just because I want to say she's making a lot of money, okay? And the only reason I know she's making a lot of money is because she popped up on my Facebook, and I'm monetized on Facebook too. And I have less followers than her and less views, okay? And I'm not going to tell you how much I make, but I'm going to tell you, I know she's making at least 10 grand a month. At least 10 grand a month off of Facebook alone. Just alone. That's not including TikTok. TikTok's paying peanuts, so who cares? But it's still some money. So I know she's probably making like 14 grand a month, realistically. Like, that's a conservative number. And if you're making 14 grand a month, it is absolutely absurd to not be able to save any of that money for any sort of housing. Especially living in a motel. I'm telling you right now, she could easily save up within like 3 months and go get an RV. Like, I just don't understand. And that's why I'm saying she's on drugs. Because there's no way you can blow through that much money without just spending it on drugs. I mean, someone has been seeing her do her like little TikTok shop reviews, and they totaled up all the cost of all the little things that she got, and it was like over $1,200. I think it's just annoying for me to see children struggling, living in poverty, knowing how much money people make on social media, because I am monetized. And so I know how much money she's making. And I've kept quiet about it because I'm not a pocket watcher, but I am someone who wants to look out for those children. And I'm telling you, she's making at least $10,000 to $14,000 a month. And that's a conservative number. And just know all that money is going towards drugs. And as an ex-drug addict, look, takes one to know one. I know what I'm looking at, okay? That lady's on drugs.
And whether those guesses are high or low, one thing became obvious to the audience. The numbers didn't match the lifestyle being described. Because if housing assistance existed, and groceries had support, and gifts regularly showed up from supporters, then why did stability never get closer over an entire year? That's the question that kept repeating in comment sections. Not how are they poor, but why does the situation never change? Even the privacy argument started collapsing. At one point, housing suggestions were rejected because the location would be public knowledge, yet the motel had already been publicly shown multiple times online, so safety couldn't fully explain staying either. Which circles back to the uncomfortable theory viewers kept whispering. The motel wasn't preventing progress, it was preserving the narrative. Because once there's a stable home, the daily survival storyline ends. No more cramped room updates, no more urgent explanations, no more constant "we're trying" arcs. And the longer time went on without any visible step forward, the harder it became for people to see it as temporary. And honestly, that's the part that's making viewers uneasy. Not curious, uneasy. Because drama is entertaining when it's temporary, but when the same pattern repeats around kids, it stops feeling like messy life and starts feeling predictable. And people have realized they've already watched this exact storyline once before. The first time, there were warning signs, talks about owing money, hints the place wouldn't last, comments saying they should start looking early. Nothing really happened until the absolute last second. Then came the scramble. Lives full of urgency, phone calls, panic energy. Suddenly, everything was everyone else's fault. Landlords, timing, paperwork, housing systems, anybody but the fact that preparation never happened when there was time. And that's how they landed in the motel in the first place. Now, fast forward a year, and viewers are noticing that same calm before the storm energy again. There's talk of demolition, talk of eventually needing to leave, talk of future housing, but not a lot of visible preparation. No steady updates about applications submitted weeks ahead. No, we secured a place, just waiting on keys. No moving boxes slowly appearing in the background. Instead, daily life looks settled, comfortable even, like the room is semi-permanent despite everyone knowing it isn't. And that's what makes people anxious watching, the contrast. On one side, there are long conversations about the dream future, the bigger kitchen, multiple bathrooms, laundry room, land, the ideal setup. Full vision board mode, very detailed, very imagined. But between the motel and that dream house, there's no visible middle chapter. No starter apartment era, no temporary rental transition, no stepping stone phase. just present struggle and future fantasy with hope expected to bridge the gap. And hope isn't a housing strategy. So now, every time housing comes up, viewers aren't reacting to the words, they're reacting to the timing. Because last time, action only started when there were days left, not months, when the deadline arrived first and the plan arrived second. People are wondering if they're about to watch that same countdown again. Will there already be a lease waiting before they're told to leave? Will documents be ready ahead of time? Will the move happen calmly instead of urgently? Or will it once again turn into last-minute lives, rushed packing, and another emergency relocation? That's the tension sitting quietly behind every update now. Not whether they'll move eventually, everyone knows they will. The real question is whether this time the move happens by planning or by pressure. Because the difference between a setback and a cycle is whether preparation starts before the clock runs out. So yeah, the question now isn't if they'll move, it's how. What do you think? Cycle or coincidence? Like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because this story definitely is